Recognition, power, and influence is your birthright, and this podcast shows you how to get there. Welcome to episode number 267. In today's episode, I'm breaking down how you can begin to take more strategic risks in your career. This is a particular time in the world right now where taking a risk, it seems like the worst idea in the world, and rightfully so, because the risks that you might be taking might actually be detrimental to your career. But if you know the difference between a strategic risk and an unnecessary risk or a hurtful or harmful risk, then you can begin to make progress, right? You can begin to start to find yourself even amongst craziness in the world and chaotic times and the unknown, having success. That is what I want for you. And so in today's episode, I'm breaking down exactly how you can start to stand out amongst your peers and really get that recognition, power, and influence that you already deserve. Let's get started. Welcome to Women Changing Leadership. I am your host, Stacy Mayer, and I teach you how to get promoted, get paid, and bring your whole self to the leadership table. I am on a mission to change organizations from the C-suite out because women are the new face of leadership, and we are doing it on our terms. Hello, corporate badasses. Welcome to another episode of Women Changing Leadership. I am your host, Stacy Mayer, and super excited, as always, to be here with you again this week. Every week of this new year has felt a little bit overwhelming, a little bit exhausting, and a little bit mind-numbing, I must admit. The news changes every week. Something unexpected, something a little bit more chaotic happens. And it really reminds me of the power of embracing the chaos, embracing change, and how when I work with my clients and really teach women how to expect that, come to expect the chaos, expect the change. And it's actually an incredibly empowering and freeing opportunity for them to step into higher levels of leadership. And today I'm going to be talking to you about how to take more strategic risks in your career and what risks look like when we're in a time of layoffs or it doesn't feel like there's a lot of opportunities for us to advance. And we really feel compelled to go head down, focus on our work. It's not the time to take risks. We just want to keep our day job. So I'm going to talk more about that. But before I do, because I am embracing what's happening in the world right now, I wanted to talk for a minute about the Grammys. So my children and I have been watching the Grammys actually all week long because I can't sit for a 2.5-hour show at this point in my life. I don't have that much time. But, luckily we can watch it on record on Paramount and just kind of go through it at our own leisure. And one of the things that really stood out to me about the Grammys this year, and granted, I don't watch them religiously, but I couldn't help but notice how many women were nominated and how many women of color won awards this year. And I don't think this happens every year because you'll hear the winners when they come up there, they'll say something like, I'm only the third, female to win this award in the past 60 years. So it is a difference. It is something that is a notable difference. And my daughter actually pointed it out to me. I mean, I felt it. I saw it. I was noticing it. And then she said, wow, there are so many women up there. This is incredible. She was getting very excited about this. And then something that really stood out to me was the head of the Grammys Association or Grammys, I don't know, the club, that the membership that all of the people belong to. He spoke about halfway through the award ceremony, and he talked about some of the changes that he has made to the membership since 2020. And one of the really big things that he noted is that he has, doubled down on their efforts to diversify the membership and to have more women as part of the membership and more women of color in particular as part of their membership. So the Grammys are selected, the winners are selected, and also the nominees are selected by the members of their community. I think they were saying it was like something like 1,600 members or 1,300, I'm not sure, members in their community. Now, this is marketing. I totally realize that it's, I don't know all the details and the numbers behind this. And so I want to be very transparent in that, I was sitting in the audience, a very liberal audience, and we're absorbing this information for the first time, given by the president who wants to obviously present the Grammys in a certain light. And even if it's marketing, I would venture to say that it's great marketing because it's actually promoting diversity. And one of the things that has felt a bit overwhelming to me since, 2025 started, and more importantly, since Trump took office, is the conversation against diversity. And it is very hard and difficult to absorb sometimes and to sort of remind myself what my opinions are, what my strength is, and how I am supporting women to work through these days. And that's actually what inspired to have this episode on strategic risks. But anyway, so he talked about bringing more representation into the membership community. What happens when we have representation? People select what they like. And so when we have more representation, and he was talking about how the numbers are much more equal now, and then what we're going to get is we're going to get more representation on the stage. So it's not that all of a sudden we have segued into having more women on the stage. We did that because we have more representation in the voting class, and they're actually just picking the artists that they enjoy, the artists that they like. And those are the ones who are represented on the stage. So when you have representation in positions of influence, like the voters, when we have a voting power that is actually choosing who wins, whether that's a promotion or, these higher levels of leadership. And of course, there's politics as well. But because I'm going to stay in my own lane and talk about women who make it to the leadership table, when we have representation and influence, people are going to pick the people that are the most qualified. The women and the women of color who won these awards did not all of a sudden become great artists. They became great recognized artists. And yes, maybe this was their breakout year of this beautiful, incredible, life-changing song that they were able to create. But it's really important to remember that when we have representation, then we get an accurate reflection of what's happening in the world. And I just think that that's a really powerful reminder, and that representation matters. And, I'm preaching to the choir, but when we're thinking about diversity in the news and what's being thrown at us, just to remind yourself that getting yourself into a position of power and influence is literally the most important thing you can do to help other women rise. If that is your goal, if you want to give back, then get yourself into a position where you actually have that voting power, you have that influence at your organization. And that's what I'm here to do too, to help support you to do that. So now going into this idea of strategic risk. So something I've been thinking about a lot is that when there are times of chaos and you see people getting laid off around you, you see the unemployment rates spiking, you see a lot of chaos happening in the world in the sense where we don't know where it's going to land, because especially in the United States, like one day Donald Trump says something as law and then the next day that's changed and then the next day it's law again, right? Like, so we don't know what's actually how this is going to play out. The feeling, and honestly, the smart thing to do is to step back and listen. And so I want all of you to go into this observer mode. And so there's two different types of this observer mode. There's the disempowered observer, and then there's the empowered observer. So who is the disempowered observer? This is the woman that is scared shitless, goes back to her desk and says, now is not the time to speak up. Now is not the time to stand out. I might literally be killed at the stake. We have a lot of trauma and a lot of proof in our lives that when women speak up, when women find their voice, they get persecuted. And actually, we're seeing that happen in real time right now. On the public stage, what is happening for women who speak out against the wrong people. So rightfully so, we, need to take that step back. We need to stop for a second and actually decide what we're going to do. But the challenge is that when you're the disempowered observer, what you end up doing is you go back to your desk, head down, you want your work to speak for itself. You go back to all of your old habits, which is like, you know what? I'm just going to make sure I hit my targets, make sure all of my projects go to completion, make sure I do a really great job at work, and, so that I don't get fired. Now, here's the thing is that all of the people who are getting laid off, a lot of the people who are getting laid off are really great workers, had incredible performance reviews, were amazing at their job. They're getting laid off. Like, go on LinkedIn, see the number of women who are really great at their job who are laid off. This had nothing to do with them getting laid off. And so you could say, oh, that's just chance, right? They laid off that entire division. They laid off that entire organization. And in some ways it is. And I encourage those women to go out and find an even bigger, better, badder job. And I can help you do that. If you're listening to this podcast, I can help you with my interview skills and interview magic course. And also the podcast that I have right here can help you figure out how you're going to make it to that next level of leadership, even while you're unemployed. So I am available for all of that. And I'm not saying that it's your fault by any means. Please do not interpret fault when anybody gets laid off or let go from their job. There is no fault. Oh my God, please. But the empowered observer is more empowered when they actually get themselves to a position of layoff, right? So, you could say, okay, and I've spoken about this very openly because it's so incredibly true, but the women inside of the Leadership Table Mastermind, we just had 3 big layoffs happen on January 6th inside of our group. And all 3 women said, yeah, it sucks, but ... Like, I have something else lined up. I'm so grateful I've already been working on interviews. I'm so grateful I've already built those connections. Thank you so much. And so it's really important to empower yourself, even when these, circumstantial opportunities happen to us. And so I want you to have choices. I want you to know what you're going to do next. I want you to be looking forward, all of those great things. But when we're talking about risks in particular, I want to go back to this idea that being head down is being like risk averse, like that you're not actually taking a risk. And I think it can kind of feel that way. You're like, okay, my appetite for risk is very low right now. I cannot lose my job, or, I just need to be a good worker. I just need to wait this chaos out and see what happens. And so it is very normal to see this type of behavior as being, not taking a risk. And I am here to tell you that you are taking, by doing this, the biggest risk of all in your entire career. By having this attitude, you are actually taking a huge, huge risk. Huge. Like bigger than big than big. Going back to your desk, head down, waiting this crap out is the biggest risk that you can take. And I want you to take this to heart because you're doing it because you think it's less risky. If you're listening to this podcast and that's what you're doing, you're like, I'm going to lay low. I'm not going to join Stacy's coaching programs because now is not the time to speak up, to speak out, to work on my career. Now's the time to lay low, to be quiet. No, you are taking a huge, huge risk by having this attitude. And this is my soapbox, and I'm going to scream on top of this soapbox as loud as I possibly can. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. And going back to this idea of layoffs and things like that, and they're sort of beyond our control, right? Which is true. There are situations that we can keep and stay empowered that are within our control. So one great example is if you take back the power and you actually wake up and you look around you and you see a bunch of people getting laid off, like, start getting your shit in order. Start making sure that you know how to stand out at your organization amongst your peers. Start making sure that you've built the relationships. You can start today. You don't have to look back and say, oh, shoulda, woulda, coulda. Like, get started. Figure out what your long-term vision is. Figure out what you want in your next role, even while you're in your role. Something I've always said, it's in the foreword of my book, I talk about, if you want a promotion, deliberately manage your career. So if you're just head down at your desk doing a great job, you're not deliberately managing your career. You're trying to be a better manager. That's it. And you know what it's going to get you? Nothing. Your small, tiny pay raises, looking up one time, maybe you get laid off, maybe you don't. Maybe you find other people get promoted even in this chaos around you and you start to get pissed off because you're like, wait, I'm doing a better job than they are and they're the ones getting promoted. But guess what? They're the ones out there building influence, right? Actually getting recognized for the work that they're doing. And you can do that for yourself, even in this environment where it feels like taking risks is a bad idea. So now I want to go into what a risk is and what a risk isn't. And so I really believe sitting at your desk and doing your job and trying to be good all the time and not doing anything else is a huge risk, right? I've already laid that out for you. But another thing that I really want to point out is that I don't believe that what we do is the opposite. I think it's equally risky to go to the other extreme. So I just had a really great conversation with a woman who is not interviewing for jobs. So she has an amazing position at her company, but her company is it's just lots of flux. She has huge reorgs happening. They're not doing layoffs, thankfully, but there's just a lot of change happening at her company and she's getting shifted around and moved. And she's at that vice president level. So now she's reporting into another vice president. So there's just a lot of change happening. And so she's been talking to recruiters, at least so far on LinkedIn. And one of the risks that she's taking right now, which I say is a unnecessary or a bad risk, is that she is telling recruiters right out of the gate what her salary demands. It kind of sounded like when she was explaining it to me were. And if they cannot meet them, she doesn't even get on the phone with them. All right. So this is fine. I recommend that we have very high salary demands and I recommend that you're compensated accordingly. I want you to recognize that when you go low, like that's what you're going to get in your organization. You're also going to get treated that way as well. And so, title matters, compensation matters, all of this matters. But what I coached her to do instead is to really understand why she is asking for that particular comp and to articulate the why and the value that she brings, and then also include the number. Okay. And the only way we can really do that is to get on the phone with somebody. And so she is doing herself a huge, huge, huge disservice by just being like, no, 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 no. So that's one way that we're taking risks that are bad risks, right? Is that we're just sort of saying, I demand this title, I demand this salary without backing it up with why and what we bring to the table. So I don't mind. Well, actually, I do mind. I want you to ask for salary that you want. I want you to stretch yourself. I want you to ask for those titles, but I also want you to back this shit up. You have to tell them why. You have to know why. Like, even when I was asking her why she demands that salary, the only thing she could come up with was because that was what her current organization was paying her. Right? No, you have value. So I figured out what the 2 sentences that she could add and include to her salary demand. So if we're going to demand these high salaries, which we should, and actually, let's get real. Our high salaries are somebody else's low salary who's not even as qualified as us. So I want to remind you that your high salaries aren't even that high. So if we're going to be doing that, it's actually incredibly risky and it's cutting off real magical opportunities that could be right in front of us because we haven't articulated our value. We haven't shared why we are worth it, not just because that's what we currently get paid. This is so critical. The other thing that risk taking is not is just telling your boss that you want to be promoted, making sure that everybody knows your value, bragging, raising your hand, speaking up, all of these horrible traits that we've been told as women we need to do more of. And quite frankly, we've been shamed into believing that we're not doing. And so then therefore we come off as too aggressive when we start actually acting that way. Why? Because it sounds a bit more like a demand or like a pick me, right? And because of the political climate and what's happening in our world today, as a woman, if we had to fight twice as hard before, we have to fight twice as hard now. If people thought we were too aggressive before, they're saying we're quadruply aggressive right now. word on the street, the marketing is, this is what's being said about us as women, that we want too much. We're asking for too much. And if we want to fight that, then we have to start understanding what risk actually is. It's not going around demanding more, 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 more. It's showing our value and demanding more, 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 and saying, hey, this is what I'm worth. And here are the reasons why. And I'm going to bring this value to your team. Hell yeah, you want to hire me right now. Okay, so there is a huge, huge difference in advocating for yourself in a vacuum versus advocating yourself and backing it up. Knowing how to speak to your value. This is such an important component to taking these types of risks. So I wanted to show you that there's like this one extreme, which is you think it's not taking a risk, but it is risky. And then this other extreme where you think it's taking a risk, but it's actually hurting you. It's an unnecessary risk to just go around demanding. Now, this third option, the one that I actually recommend and the most strategic risk that you can start taking now and always, is to really set yourself up next to your peers, right? I want you to stand out amongst your peers. And I really want you to be somebody that everybody around wants in the conversation. That's our goal. Our goal is to be included. So I want your boss to want to have conversations with you about your ideas. So many of you are wasting your one-on-one time with your boss just doing check-ins because you're like, oh, they're so busy. They're so overwhelmed. They have so many things on their plate. They don't have time for me. No, you need to be having idea-driven conversations with your boss on a regular basis, and you can orchestrate that. You can create those types of idea conversations. I talk about it on this podcast. I have talked to you about it before. I'm not going to go into how to do that right now, but really start to ask yourself, am I doing this? If you are having idea-driven conversations with your boss on a regular basis, then you are doing a strategic risk. It's very risky to have idea-driven conversations, but it is working in your favor. If you are having conversations and skip-level conversations with other leaders at your organization, this is a strategic risk that you need to be and can be taking right now. This is something that is available to you. You can put it on the table. You can say, hey, I want to have a conversation with you. And you are providing value to that other person who is actually in a position of influence and power at your organization. This is going to have you start standing out amongst your peers. They're going, not your peers, but the higher level leaders are going to see you as a valued member of your organization. When you start to do this, layoffs or not, you are empowered to continue doing this outside, and I always recommend always be interviewing, not because of this particular climate and what's happening in the world right now, but because that's just the approach. That's just the approach. That's like, in my opinion, the only way to continue thriving, to continue finding yourself in those actual seats of power where you have a real voice at the table. And so I want you to start asking yourself about these strategic risks. What are the ways that I can sit back and listen in this group meeting? Maybe I'm not like me, and adding to the noise. But then you know what I'm going to do after the meeting? I'm going to schedule a couple one-on-ones because I want to dig deeper on one of the topics that was brought up. I'm scheduling one-on-ones, again, with the VP level or above, somebody who has actual influence at your organization, and you become an idea person, a thought partner with that other person at the organization. You're going to see what your intrinsic value really is. You're also going to learn what really matters to them at the organization, and you're going to mirror that with your work. These are strategic risks that really set you apart. The other really beautiful thing about this is that you feel better about your job. Typically speaking, when women are complaining to me about feeling stuck or feeling like they don't like their job, or I've had 3 bosses in the past 5 years, or actually the past 6 months, my boss doesn't really care about my career development. I feel like this is a dead-end job. all of those situations is because they've been head down trying to do a good job, making sure they hit their performance review marks. And then at the end of the day, they have nothing left to show for it. When you're having these idea-driven conversations, even if they're once a month, you feel like your work matters, like you're influencing up. You're actually seeing the fruits of your labor come to fruition. And guess what? This equals a promotion. It equals the ability to then raise your hand and to say, hey, I want more. I want to level set my salary. Hey, I want a promotion. What can I do to get that? What can I do to make that happen by December? Even because we all see it. We see people getting promoted even in times of layoff. Even in times of layoff, those are the people that stand out. Those are the people who aren't just head down at their desk doing their job. They're pulling themselves out of the weeds and they're saying, look, yes, pick me, but they're actually walking the talk. They're actually showing up as that higher level executive leader. When you can start to do this, when you can start taking those types of strategic risks, you're going to see the rewards to no end. Like literally anything can happen in the world around you. Chaos, change, craziness, layoffs, not layoffs, and you will be able to take advantage of all of those opportunities and make them work for you. This is the definition of an authentically powerful woman, to be able to step into that place to say, hey, I want more, I deserve more, and I'm walking the talk. Let me show you my work. Let me talk about my ideas. Let me hear your ideas. Let's collaborate together. Let's partner together. This is a particular communication style. This is a way. This is learnable. If you listen to what I'm saying and you're like, oh my God, Stacy, that would be amazing. I would love to learn how to do that. Then I welcome you to join me inside of the Leadership Table Mastermind. It's a secret society of women leaders where we're doing this work of executive level communication on a daily basis. We're challenging ourselves to speak up in a way that can actually be heard, that actually helps us make that impact right now. I want you to be able to get recognition, power, and influence that you already deserve. This is your birthright. You are ready. You don't need another unique set of skills, but you have to be knowing what you're doing that is truly risky. And then you have to turn that into an actual strategic risk so that you can begin to benefit and also give back to the greater society and the world that needs you in that seat of power. Thank you all so much for listening, and I'll see you next week. Bye. Before you go, I have a question for you. Do you know how close you are to your next promotion? Really? Not what your boss has told you, not what you even believe to be true, but have you actually taken the time to sit down, take an assessment, review the 5 categories that it takes to get promoted into senior executive leadership positions and decided where you fall in each category and given yourself a ranking on a scale of 1 to 10 of how close you are to getting your next promotion? Have you done this? Well, now's your chance. If that feels interesting to you and you're like, hey, I want to know exactly how close I might actually be or how far away you might be and what it's going to take to get you even closer, then I invite you to take my promotability quiz. This is a quiz that I put together with practical tips that actually tell you where you're lacking and where you're winning. What are the areas that you actually need to improve and not necessarily what your boss is telling you all the time so that you can take concrete steps towards landing that next promotion and changing the face of the leadership table. Go to yourpromotabilityscore.com to take your free assessment today.